Welcome to the Daily Edge. Steve, Jake, Mark, we are the Noodlebergs. Let's find the edge. And that starts with our affirmation, which is I show up every day with a champion's mindset, ready to compete and grow. And there's no better segue into today's episode, which is a Super Bowl episode, than that.
I love that. I started a presentation last week with, 90% of success starts up here. So it is mindset driven.
If you don't know us, we are football coaches at heart. We do come from that background. So it was a Super Bowl Sunday for us. Obviously we were super excited, but I think it's really interesting to talk about that we have two quarterbacks that have played a lot of football and had been in the Super Bowl before. And you had one who lost 2 years ago, which was Jalen Hurts. And then you had one with Pat Mahomes. And Pat Mahomes had a comment after the game and he goes, honestly, the losses are more important than the wins. And if you talk about Jalen Hurts, him winning it this year, he talked about 2 years ago, looking at the assistant coaches and going, I'll be back.
Yep.
And I think it's so fascinating to start there that the failure was more impactful in their eyes than actually winning it.
And I think that was circled all of the content for the week was every Super Bowl champion that got interviewed all said, we remember the ones we lost more than the ones that we won. The ones that you lose stick with you longer because those are the lessons that either lead you to another one or are the obstacle that you don't get over and you don't get back to.
Yeah, for me, when Mahomes was interviewed afterwards and he got battered, he just said, yeah, it's my fault. I take full responsibility and accountability. And I love when an athlete, when he's a real champion, it's not about championships. It's about a champion mindset.
And I think it's such a mindset shift because they failed.
Right.
They ultimately
Miserably.
failed.
Yeah, they got dominated.
Dominated. If you were one of the 100 million people who tuned in, you saw the ass kick.
You didn't just lose. You got embarrassed.
He
Right.
didn't score in the first half.
Ill prepared.
Right. You
Outcoached.
looked outcoached, outplayed.
Andy Reid said, hey, they played great. We were outcoached. They were ready. We weren't.
I mean, I'm a Hamilton fan, so it reminds me of the song, like, we are outgunned, we are outmanned. Like, they were all of that.
It was hard to watch because they were so inept that really not being able to do anything.
I think the question is, does success get boring? And as the Chiefs, you've been to 5 Super Bowls. You were on the cusp of winning, your third in a row, whereas you got the Eagles have that hunger and the excitement and the energy, and it didn't feel like that existed in a Chiefs team that had been there before.
They were definitely flat, but when you think about it, they just came out with the odds for next year, and the odds-on favorite is Kansas City. So do you believe that Patrick Mahomes will be back? That's a confidence. That's
I mean, like
Yes.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
He's got a decade left in his career. Right. And because he thinks that way, because he goes, I take responsibility for this. Yep. I made mistakes. I can't allow this to happen again. But that's great. And it's really important as a leader. The reality is, particularly in football and definitely in business, you are only as good as your weakest link. And they had a ton of weak links yesterday.
The offensive line was just really atrocious. But when you talk about this in a business sense, there's still people that I talk to that give me the story. Well, if this had happened 5 years ago, then I would have, if you lost, man, you didn't get the deal, wake up. Look yourself in the mirror and say, what do I need to do to get better? What did I learn? And man, 2 seconds after the game, Patrick Mahomes was doing that. Nick Saban, win or lose,
right.
He's right in the game. Next,
these are where the tough decisions really lie, because you have been to 3 straight Super Bowls. The Eagles went to a Super Bowl. They lost a lot of their coaches and their offensive, and Sheehan, I think is his name, if I got that right. The defensive coordinator also left. They replaced the coordinators, and then they struggled. Yep. Like, they were bad last year, or in their standards, pretty bad. Yeah. And he revamped the whole coaching staff again. Fired the defensive coordinator, hired a new offensive coordinator, made the changes that were necessary. And I think with the Eagles organization, they have this fire where they are all so independently motivated. You see A.J. Brown looking at the head coach. You see the Chauncey Gardners. You see the players holding each other and the coaches to an accountability where if we're not all doing our jobs, we're pissed the fuck off.
Which I think rubs a lot of people the wrong way,
Yeah,
which
but-
points to like high performers don't like mediocre people and mediocre people don't like high performers. But like, this is where the businesses that we work with, I have a real come to Jesus meeting with them. Like, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable and get in people's faces about stuff and be transparent about what you really want to do. Cause you can't go, it's all hunky dory and be a high performing culture. You have to address when you don't meet the standard and when it's not right. Because if you don't even get to that game.
Like one of the stories that's not really talked about is Howard Roseman was an intern there.
Sure.
And, you know, the intern stays in the organization, lives it, breathes it, becomes the GM, and makes some amazing moves last year. You know, you bring in Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
It's a game-changing talent. He picked the 2 rookies who it was his birthday.
Yeah, Cooper DeJean.
And
Yeah.
the guy has some unbelievable playoffs.
So I would say that the Eagles are, and similar to the Lions and other teams that we've seen be really successful, they are more about the mindset of winning.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, right, is not the best quarterback to ever play the game.
Right.
He's not the most talented quarterback to ever play the game, but his mindset and his leadership is that of what needs to be, stemming from Nick Saban, of we are constantly and continually on the rise. We are raising that standard for ourselves every day. And I'm willing to hold myself accountable to it and then hold others accountable.
And I think this conversation, I would love your guys' perspective on it, with dealing with organizations, dealing with A+ players, or, you know, performers who might start to tail off at the end or lose the motivation. And I'm not calling anybody out, but Travis Kelce looks old.
Done.
Yeah.
Looks old, and
his mind's not in the game.
And I don't
anymore.
know, he doesn't play with the same fire he used to.
No.
At all, you know.
Even
And
the
how do
way
you
he showed
how
up
do you
at the
approach
game.
those conversations though with A+ players that aren't serving the organization
It's
anymore?
time.
Yeah.
And how do you not alienate them or not alienate the rest of the organization or the performance, but how do you get the right guys on the bus at all times?
Because, so it's not about Travis Kelce, right? Like, if you are Andy Reid, or you are the GM of the Chiefs, or you are the CEO of the company, or you are the CRO of the company, it ain't about the person that's in the seat. It's about the logo. It's about the team.
So when you speak about Jalen Hurts and his leadership style, he is the poster child for Stoicism.
Yeah.
Not too high, not too low, which is just a point about success. You're going to deal with failure. There are things that are going to go wrong. How you deal with them, what your mindset is, how you move through them. Week 4, they were talking about firing Sirianni, man.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan Day was going to be out of college football. You know, I mean, and they
back it up even more. I mean, it's important to talk on Jalen Hurts' journey, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to hit on that for a second specifically, though, because there's a parallel there, right? Like, in today's world, particularly if you're in the public eye, everything is now and what's happening right now. You're either the greatest right now or you're the worst right now. And it could be the very same in business. You could be having the highest revenue month you've ever had and turn around and have the lowest revenue month you've ever had. And if you ride the wave of the revenue, you're dead. Yeah. You're toast. You have no long-term vision. You have no consistency. You're not going to be able to survive that. So the fact that he's able to is great.
In my career, when we talk about sales, you know, there are those things that you just, no matter what you do, you can't make it work. Things go wrong if you feed into that. You know, that's why when, you know, I was talking to this group, they were talking about motivation. And I was like, these guys aren't motivated.
Right.
You know, if I need to motivate you, there's a problem.
Yeah.
They do talk about momentum. And right off the bat, that first series, Philadelphia created momentum and then stacked behaviors that like bang, 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 you're done.
Yeah.
You know?
And the difference between business and football is there's a shelf life on football.
Yeah, 1,000%.
You know that you're running a sprint, not a marathon. Yep. And I think that allows
it
players.
It is a now thing. Yeah.
It's a now. It's I have to give everything because I don't know that I'm coming back. Right. Yep. And because of the Patriots, because of the Chiefs, we think it's pretty easy to get to the Super Bowl now. Right. And we don't, conceptualize how hard it is to win 17 games, go in the playoffs, win another 3, go to the Super Bowl and all that. And how do you stay motivated in that marathon? And I want you to talk about it, Dad, because you've been in business for 60 years now. different markets, different companies, opening, selling, building.
That's a great question.
How do you continuously climb on that horse to ride and go forward? Where I was talking about Travis Kelce, where like the motivation isn't there as much anymore.
Yeah.
I've climbed the mountain. And how do you slide back down the mountain to climb it consistently?
Yeah, you know, for me, it was always about the basics. When things were not working properly, I got back to something as simple as, instead of forcing to try and get a deal, I had a list of people that I knew made me feel good. I'd buzz them and say, hey, you got 15 minutes for me. Help me change the mindset. So focus on sleep, focus on preparation, focus on the things that I knew worked, and just be patient and have faith. It's really super hard to do.
You have to love the process. And that's where like football is different than business, because if you are no longer willing to commit all that's required, which is the same as coaching. And I will tell you that at 32, that's where I was like, I don't know that I'm willing to commit 16 hours a day for 340 days a year to this goal. And if you even start to blink at that thought in football, you got to go. You got to go. You
so
have
here's
to.
an interesting thing.
Which is not the same as business.
Conversely, as a leader in business, the minute I woke up at night and looked at the ceiling and said, I think I have a problem with this guy, there was a problem.
Right.
Like if Andy Reid's not waking up and looking at the ceiling going, I got a problem with Travis. That was my dude.
Yep.
He's no longer my dude. He's got a whole nother life ahead of him. Those reckonings are really important.
So here's something that happens in sports all the time that kind of happened with Travis Kelce this year, was like everybody knew that he was kind of on his last go round. Like it was like this known thing. And like we saw Kobe do it. We saw Dwayne Wade do it. We've seen lots of basketball players go through the farewell tour, which I would tell you, if I was the owner of the organization, I'm like, fuck you, your farewell tour.
Right.
We're here to win. This is not a happy go round. Right.
We like to use around here.
Look
This
at
is
LeBron.
not a
Look
hobby.
at LeBron at 40 is crushing
Still
it.
playing the game at the highest level. And I think if LeBron said, I can't play at this level, I'm out.
Do it.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, it's just different, guys. It's different. That mindset and that passion and that drive
so
to do whatever
hold on
it
to
is.
that Kelce thing. Go back 2 years, 3 years. When he walked in the locker room, he was an animal. His hair wasn't done, and he had that grit. And then last night he showed up. He looked like John Travolta.
Gotta ask the question. Gotta ask the question. Does it have something to do with Taylor Swift? Did he get soft? Did Taylor Swift make him soft? Did Taylor Swift make him soft?
So Fox asked Taylor Swift to come on set.
Yeah, nowhere to
right?
be found.
Hold
ever.
on. That was their game plan?
Right.
Was to show up and go,
Right.
please, if you're in the building,
We'd
can
love to
please
have you come
down?
on.
We'll wipe the show. We're gonna beg you to come on. And it's fascinating because obviously Taylor Swift has changed the NFL. And from a business perspective, having Taylor Swift a part of the NFL has been, I don't know, a money-making giant.
She brought females
to the party, which had never really been there, or had been there sporadically, not at the rate that they were. But I don't like to blame everything happening in someone's life for why they didn't show up on the football field. I think it's your responsibility to handle everything that's going around you and find a place for it and come to work and do your job.
Well, there was a
the
story about Patrick Mahomes heard just before the game that his grandfather was passing. He's in hospice, and I don't know. It doesn't matter. You're a human. You gotta find those places.
So one of my favorite quotes from a great movie, For the Love of the Game, Kevin Costner as the pitcher for the Detroit Tigers.
Oh, wow.
His motto before every pitch, clear the mechanism. And it was his way of clearing out the noise that was happening in the stadium and all the thoughts and all the clear the mechanism, focus on doing the thing. The people who play at the highest levels, the people that perform at the highest levels, do know how to compartmentalize. They know how to clear the mechanism.
Unbelievable point that most people show up this morning not ready to do what they're supposed to do.
Especially this morning.
Right.
That's
Well,
right.
I think the
caught up
entire
in,
city of Philadelphia is on the run from their
they're caught
emotions.
up, and this will be a hangover for a couple
I don't
of
know.
days.
I watched Get Up this morning. I was watching ESPN. It looked like everybody just in general was not prepared to do their job this morning.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with the Get Up set in New Orleans. It was terrible. They didn't even have like an HD feed. It looked like everybody was ill prepared.
We talked the 3 Ps the other day. What were the 3 Ps? It was prepare,
perform, get paid.
Right?
Like
it's a pretty simple process. And if there's a break in any of those or the first two, you're never going to get paid consistently.
Right. On a typical day, most people that are in sales do not show up prepared mentally, physically, with the backdrop of what they need to be doing.
And they're fucking run over.
They're running around.
What happened?
We used to call it show up and throw up.
Yeah.
They're here, but they're at the coffee machine or they're going to the bathroom and they're not doing work. They're just showing up. You got to be ready to do this. For me, that's Sunday night prep. I was prepped before I came to your house for what was going to happen today, had my notes, and then I used the morning hours to get ready. But for whatever reason, they said the Chiefs had no distractions, no injuries. They didn't look ready to play.
I think my number one takeaway, if it's for the Eagles losing 2 years ago and then winning, or if it's the Chiefs going through what they're going through now, is don't run from the data that's in front of you. Don't run from the evidence. Don't run from the things that are right in front of you. And have the conversations based on what you have done, the truths, and be willing to sit there objectively and put your emotions aside and say, look, this is not a hobby. This is a job, and we are required to do these things. And as soon as your organization gets away from that, it's a disservice to everything you're doing on a daily basis. What was the quote you said when we were starting to revamp everything? And I said, I'm sorry. I changed it. I was like, I know we just changed it, but I got to do it again.
If it's not the best it can be, it has to change like that. And so I think that's the takeaway for today. That is the edge for today, is it starts in your mindset. And you have to be willing to accept a ridiculous standard and how hard it is to chase that standard, and then deal with all the adversity that comes with that. If you really want to be the best, if you don't want, if you're not willing to accept that, don't say you want to be the best then. Right. And it's okay to say you don't want to be the best.
Don't say you're playing the game.
Right.
Because you're not.
Right.
You're not. You're faking it. You're playing little league. If you want to do it at the highest levels, it requires.
I got a question for you guys. I think I want your opinion of this. So, all for the 2 weeks, they're talking about 3-peat and dynasty.
Shout out Pat Riley.
Yeah, Pat Riley.
Sorry.
Oh shit, he just got paid.
Sort of. Not as much as he could have. Not as much as he could have.
Exactly right. But you're listening to that bullshit all week. It's got to drive you. Yes or no?
So I go back to no, it's noise.
Okay.
All that shit is noise. What should be driving you is that you are in that locker room on the mission that you set 6 months ago, and you're here to compete. You're here to do it. You're here to finish it.
Wow.
Everything else is noise. It's all noise. Wow. Clear the mechanism.
Clear the mechanism and get
the mechanism is very much like Coach Wanstead told us. Clear mind, fast feet.
Yep. Well, thank you for finding the edge with us today. This is what we do every time we drop an episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the episode, and we will see you next time. Thanks for finding the edge.